Hey everybody, it's Dr. Ram. Just sitting here on my swing. Is that cool swing or what? Look at this. It's in my backyard. We got a little playground for my daughter over here. Anyway, so I want to talk to you guys today about why butter and beef and eggs is making a comeback, and what's really the science behind that, and is there any science behind that? So for those of you who have never met me, my name is Dr. Cheng Ron. I'm a board-certified internal medicine physician. And some people are hopping on live. This is a Facebook Live discussion about 3 of my favorite items to eat and why it's making a comeback, and are there any real concerns about it making a comeback. Hey Valerie, how are you? Thanks for joining in. And so let's start with butter. Everybody's wondering about butter. Recently on Time Magazine, if you guys look in the, guys Google Time Magazine, the latest cover, it's a big glob of helping of butter on there, and it talks about is butter back. And it's a real interesting cover and a real interesting picture. This is big giant glob of butter, and they're talking about there's some myths that we've been really discussing, whether butter is really good for you or not. And I think there's a lot of careful considerations that we really have to take upon. So let's talk about butter. What really is butter? Butter is a mixture. Butter is a fat, right? It's a mixture of saturated fat, and the good high quality butters from grass-fed cows are actually orangish in color and not really pale. And a lot of them are dark yellow, and the more orange and dark yellow butter is, the more beta carotene it has, which is what's in carrots and stuff, and it's good for you. And so, is butter back? Well, butter's back. Well, there's an asterisk for that. Okay, so we used to use margarine. The U.S. diet used to use a lot of margarine in our diet. What we now know about margarine is, first of all, margarine is basically trans fat. It's a man-made trans fat, and trans fats are absolutely horrible for you. Your body does not recognize trans fat. Your body doesn't know what to do with it. You can develop a lot of autoimmune issues when you use trans fat, and so margarine has been sort of banned by the FDA, and a lot of trans fats are banned by the FDA and by the government, which is a good thing. But now that puts butter back in the equation, right? So why was butter not great in the beginning? So the bad rep that butter really got was because it's got this high saturated fat, and saturated fat is supposedly associated with worsening cardiovascular disease, according to the American Heart Association. But is it really? Is it really? So let's look at some of the studies that was done before a very long time ago, and some of the recent studies. So there are some studies that suggest that those people with increased saturated fat intake have a higher likelihood of stroke and heart attack and worsening obesity than those who don't. And I'm going to say that's an observation. It's an observation that those who consume more butter tend to be fatter and have type 2 diabetes and have worsening outcome. Yes. And is that really because of butter? We don't know, because when you look at an observational study, you can't determine cause and effect. I can say that every morning I wake up, the sun has risen, and does that mean every morning I wake up and the fact that I'm waking up is making the sun rise? No, it doesn't mean that. It's an observation, right? Those two things, or those two behaviors, are linked. So when you look at these observational studies, you really got to be careful. You really have to think that, okay, those who consume more butter tend to have worsening diabetes and worsening heart disease. Well, that's because what did these people put butter on? They put butter on toast. They put butter on biscuits. They put butter on grain-based carbohydrates, wheat products. And these are the things that worsen insulin resistance, and in turn, insulin is like a fat fertilizer. It makes you fat. And these are the things that people put butter on. So is butter associated with worsening outcomes? Yeah, in these populations. But is butter itself, if you consume it on its own, without bread, without any carbohydrates, is that going to be good for you? Studies shows there's not really a strong association with isolated butter alone or saturated fat alone with worsened cardiovascular outcome. But if you put butter onto toast, and I don't care if it's wheat, I don't care if it's white, if you put butter onto toast, that toast will elevate your blood insulin levels and cause you to deposit fat, right? And so while butter itself is not the problem, the things that people eat with butter can be the problem. Now, if you use butter to cook, that's okay. If you use butter to have an omelet like I did this morning, and where there's nothing that will really spike my insulin a whole lot, then it's not going to lead to worsening cardiovascular disease or vascular disease as much as we think it did. So, is butter back? Yeah, it's definitely back. It's back with a vengeance. But if you're using butter with other carbohydrates, and if you're eating more carbohydrates because you're bringing butter back into your life, then no, it's not going to work for you. It's really not going to work for you. So that's a consideration I give. Another consideration is the type of butter. Not all butter is created equal, right? If you have butter that you open it in the package, and the package is white and barely yellow, then it's not a very natural looking butter. Butter naturally is supposed to be dark yellow or even orange. And butter. I like butter from grass-fed cows. And my favorite brand that my friend Mimi Chan, I'm giving her a shout out, turned me on to was Kerrygold's. Kerrygold's is imported Irish butter, and imported Irish butter from pasture-raised and pasture-finished cows, which means you are what your food eats. The cows eat grass. The cows get phytonutrients, and they produce this dairy product called milk. And then that's what the butter is made from. And because of that, the butter actually has a lot of antioxidant nutrients, a lot of vitamins A, D, E, and K2 in them. And it sounds like a perfect food. If I can just list out everything that butter has, it almost sounds like a perfect food, almost as good as eggs, for those that have natural butter. So if you do consume butter, don't consume with carbs. And if you do consume butter, I suggest something like Kerrygold's, which is grass-fed, made from grass-fed cows, grass-fed butter. And if you go to Whole Foods, if you go to H-E-B, there's 3 or 4 other brands of grass-fed butter that I've seen that could be pretty good. But nothing will fool your eye. If you open a package of butter and it looks white, it looks really clear, it's not great for you. If it's dark yellow, if it's orange, go for it. If you get butter from the farmer's market, none of that thing is light yellow. None of them are truly white. They all have a darker color because of the increased amount of antioxidants, beta carotene in it. So where do you get grass-fed butter? So Whole Foods is a good place to get. We're in Texas. For those of you watching that are not in Texas, we have something called H-E-B here, which is a really big grocery store. But you can find it. Kerrygold's is actually available in a lot of different places. I just found out you can order it online too. I don't know how that works. But that's consideration about butter. Butter and saturated fat, right? So let's jump to talk about eggs and jump to talk about beef. So eggs and beef got a really bad rep because of the high cholesterol content, right? And so now we talk about cholesterol. Now, what is cholesterol a big deal? Cholesterol is a bigger deal than cholesterol is not as big of a deal as most people make it out to be. I think the focus on the cholesterol being the bad guy in the American diet is wrong. Dietary cholesterol actually does not turn into the bad LDL cholesterol that's in our system. What raises our cholesterol is actually a loaf of bread or a pastry. These things raise our cholesterol because it causes us to have insulin spikes. And the more insulin we have in our body, the more insulin resistance we get. And insulin is a fat fertilizer. And not only that, it goes to the liver and tells the liver to make all this bad stuff. And one of them is cholesterol, right? And so, now that we know that dietary cholesterol does not raise LDL or bad cholesterol or raise LDL particle sizes, which is more important, I'll get to that on another video. Now it's kind of making a comeback. And if you look at the 2015 dietary guidelines, which actually came out in 2016 in January, the final version of it, they also brought eggs and beef back. So this is the first time in American history that of the start of the dietary guidelines that you're really bringing back dietary cholesterol. I mean, that hasn't happened in decades. And then American Heart Association in 2015 also says dietary cholesterol does not raise bad cholesterol. But American Heart Association also says you should have limited consumption of saturated fat, which I don't necessarily agree with because I'm a big fan of coconut oil. And so, um, when you're looking at LDL cholesterol, is cholesterol really the bad guy? It really depends. Not all LDL is necessarily bad. You have different particle sizes that correspond to different vascular diseases, and these lower particle sizes can oxidize and do really harmful things and inflammatory things to your circulation. These are the cholesterol that matter. What you find interesting is that the cholesterol medicine like statins don't necessarily decrease those type of cholesterol. And that's why statins themselves, like simvastatin, Lipitor, atorvastatin, which is Lipitor, simvastatin is Zocor, these medications are not shown to improve or prolong someone's life who doesn't have existing coronary disease, existing heart disease, or stroke. And so, but cholesterol has been made out to be the bad guy. What we should really focus on is how much food you're taking that's going to spike your insulin level, or how insulin resistant you are. We know the number one risk factor for heart disease and stroke is insulin resistance. Okay, and those people who are the most insulin resistant are type 2 diabetics. And so, in talking about insulin resistance, if you're eating food that's causing you to rise in insulin, like processed sugars, carbohydrates, or the bad carbs, or grain-based carbohydrates as they call them, starches, and these things can elevate your insulin level. Then the higher your insulin level over time, the more insulin resistance you get, and that is the number one cause of heart disease and strokes in this country. And so, yeah, cholesterol has been made out to be a bad guy. Saturated fats have been made out to be a bad guy, but they're not as bad as we think. But no one looks at whole grain toast as being bad, but I do. I look at it and I think that if I eat this grain, it may be pro-inflammatory for me, which I know grain is inflammatory for my body, so I don't want to eat it. And I also know that it's going to spike my insulin level, which goes towards fat deposition, which goes towards fat making, makes fatty liver disease. So, these are the reasons why eggs and beef and butter is back. It's because we now have this information that we've actually known for a very long time. But these type of information, the reason why you're only hearing about it in 2016, why dietary cholesterol is not so bad and saturated fat is not so bad, the reason you're hearing about it in 2016 is because it's largely political. There's a big movement to take back our own health in this country. Healthcare expenditure has expanded. And if you look at the milk and dairy industry and the grain industry and the cereal industry, these are multi-billion-dollar industries. If you look at pharmaceutical industry, of course, another multi-billion-dollar industry. These industries do not benefit by me telling you this information. They may suffer by me telling you this information. Okay, and they don't like that. But a lot of dietary guidelines and a lot of recommendations made by different associations, government associations in this country, unfortunately have been historically biased. But if you look at the actual data, look at the study designs, and don't treat observational studies like it's gold, and you really see the truth behind it all. And so, but let's talk about. Earlier, I talked about grass-fed butter, so let's talk about beef. All right, red meat. Is red meat bad? If you have gout, it may be bad, but overall, red meat. If you eat beef, I do suggest, and I've made this change for my family, to switch to grass-fed and grass-finished beef, which means that they graze in the pasture, and as they eat phytochemicals, as they eat these vegetables, they actually get my microphone is off. As they eat these vegetables, they in their bloodstream, they get all these phytonutrients and they build their muscles. And if you're eating beef, we're eating the muscles and the fat of the beef, and these beef actually does have omega-3 content in them, like what wild fish does. You're like, omega-3s, those are good for you, right? Omega-3s are wonderful for you. So that's why we made the switch to grass-fed beef. And they're extremely expensive, though. But I think we need to have more focus on buying higher quality food in America in general. I'd rather spend my money on higher quality food than buy an extra iPhone. So it's all about displacement of spending for me and my family, right? So grass-fed beef. Where can you find grass-fed beef? They can be found in most grocery stores. There's not a grocery store where I haven't found grass-fed beef. A lot of them are prepackaged. There's some Australian, New Zealand beef that are imported. There's a lot of Texas beef. Well, I'm in Texas. I love Texas beef. There's a lot of Texas beef that are pasture raised and grass finished and grass fed. Those can be found at HEB. Once again, those can be found at Whole Foods, Randall's, and different grocery stores. If you're not in Texas, you can also find them. I found them in New York when I was living there as well. Are they expensive? Yeah, they're expensive, but you can eat them pretty much guilt-free, as long as you don't eat it with a giant loaf of garlic bread or something like that. So when you eat certain foods, you make sure you don't want to sabotage the rest of your diet. I think there's been a fixation in America on looking at one food item, saying it's good for you, and eating a crap ton of it without really looking at anything else. And I think that's a big problem, right? Like I said, the thing about butter is butter back. Yeah, butter is back. Believe that butter is back. But if you're eating butter on top of bread, then it allows you to eat more bread because you're buying more butter, then no, that butter is bad for you. Get away from that butter because it links you to eating with carbohydrates. Now, if you're replacing your vegetable oil at home with butter, then fantastic, because vegetable oil is mostly soybean oil, which can become oxidized and rancid even while it's in the packaging. It's pro-inflammatory. Then using butter instead of vegetable oil is actually not a bad idea. And so, one more point on fats and saturated fats is I like to use coconut oil too, and coconut oil is high in saturated fat. If you guys ever use MyFitnessPal and you type in coconut oil, it gives you a warning. This is high in saturated fat, in big red letters. I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I know it is. I'm purposely putting this into my body, because coconut oil is the only saturated fat that bypasses the biliary systems. For those of you who had cholecystectomies, got your gallbladder taken out, coconut oil is something that you should cook with because it doesn't irritate you as much. And coconut oil has a lot more than just saturated fat going for it. Coconut oil has a lot of different nutrients that are in there, really good essential fatty acids that are in there as well. That's really good for you. And so people use coconut oil on their skin, on their hair, fantastic. Use it in the food, fantastic. Go ahead for that. I know this talk was not really about coconut oil, but I just wanted to piggyback on that since we've been talking about saturated fat and cholesterol. So coconut oil is super high in cholesterol also, but I am not afraid. I am not afraid because I do not use coconut oil to do anything except cook my vegetables and cook my meat. I do not eat coconut oil with grain-based carbohydrates, pastries, processed sugars, or anything like that. So it's not going to matter for me. But for those of you who do, for those of you who use butter on bread, no, then butter is not great for you. If you use butter to cook your eggs, if you use butter to cook vegetables, put some butter into a package of vegetables for steaming, then yeah, it's going to be good for you. Okay? And so, thanks a lot for listening in. If you find this helpful, go ahead and share this video. If you share this video, I would absolutely love it. So, right now, let me answer some questions. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and type that out. There's like a 15-second delay between the live video and actually seeing what you guys type. So I might have to burn time for 15 seconds. But hey, Nicole, welcome to the feed. Thanks for coming in. Barbara, you're always supporting me. Thank you so much. I haven't seen you in a while, probably because I haven't done live video in a while either. Devi, hi, how are you? Smart Balance, okay. Label says non-GMO. Smart Balance what? Smart Balance, are you talking about the butter Smart Balance? Smart Balance is actually, they have different mixtures. They have a mixture of butter and omega-3 oils like olive oil. And so if you're talking about that, that's totally cool. That's very good. But I'm not too familiar with Smart Balance because I don't purchase the product. But I'm gonna have to look into it now. But I know they have a mixture oil. My stipulation about mixing omega-3 oils with something like butter is that they have two different smoking points. So whenever you heat an oil and it starts smoking, it becomes a chemical, and it's actually really not good for you at all. Once it becomes that chemical, it becomes pro-inflammatory. You want to throw the oil away. Just start over. Let the pan cool. Just start over. Don't cook with oil that's been smoking. Hey, Brenda. Awesome information. Thanks for sharing. Thank you for watching. You had to adjust butter and give up the grains. Oh, yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad you make that change. I'm really glad you make that change. And I hope you feel better because of it, too. But I could talk about this forever. But anyways, I am going to get off the feed now. So if you guys have any questions, just go ahead and put it into the comments, and I'll address them. If you guys want me to talk about anything else, I'll definitely address them as well. But I think as you know, in our country, in America, and this is where I'm broadcasting from, which is Texas, we have a long way to go in terms of really looking at our food and our diet. And since I am a big supporter of using food as medicine, and I do think food can reverse a lot of chronic diseases, and I've seen it done. I am the author of a type 2 diabetes reversal book that's found on Amazon. And if you want to go to my website, it's dustoffdiabetes.com, DUSTOFF diabetes.com. Let's check that out. And I'll be coming out with a lot more different ideas and different evidence-based research and medicine that I've seen about more dietary stuff along the way. So I truly hope that you share this, and I truly hope that you enjoyed it. So thanks a lot for watching.